All right, I believe we are recording now, so go ahead and jump in with it. Welcome in, everybody. My name is John Waller. I'm a program manager with the Arrowhead Center, and I help people out through the FAST and NMSBA programs that we have here. FAST is Federal and State Technology Partnership Program. That's really what brings us here. I think we've got it labeled under EPS, which is actually state funded to support the FAST initiatives. And then the other one is NMSBA. We won't talk about that a whole lot. But if you have some technical challenge, you want some help from the national laboratories, I can help you out with that as well. But FAST is what we're here to focus on today as we help people get to SBIR and STTR. And then that is actually where we bring in Mark. So Mark, I'll let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about just broad strokes, what it is that we're talking about today. And then I've got some questions for you.
Sounds great. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad to be part of this great service that's provided by New Mexico State with their FAST program. My name is Mark Gilboard. I'm a Senior Economic Development Coordinator with TIO, that's the Technology and Innovation Office, Division of Economic Development in New Mexico. We have grants, non-dilutive grants. We have quite a few different ones that we administer throughout the fiscal year, throughout the program year. We can have kind of various calendars with these grants, but typically they're 12-month grants that provide funds for companies headquartered in New Mexico so that we can help commercialize and develop technology companies. The Economic Development New Mexico Department has a lot of incentive programs, grants, loans, and other, financial opportunities. I'm specifically going to be talking about one grant within the Technology and Innovation Office, but I just want to mention that if you go to the EDNM website, you'll find lots of kind of guided deep dives into how Economic Development New Mexico provides funding for our homegrown companies to either expand here or even companies outside the state to relocate some or all of their operations in New Mexico. So this SBIR matching grant that I'm going to be talking about today is just one small piece of what we do here in the entirety of Economic Development New Mexico, and even just maybe 1/15 of what the Technology and Innovation Office does. Briefly mentioned, the Technology and Innovation Office, we provide funding for initiatives that are in our four priority sectors. We typically are looking to develop programs for companies that are in the aerospace industry, the bioscience industry, the advanced computing, and we like to think of that as kind of AI and quantum sector. And then advanced energy sector is the fourth one, and that does include water technologies because water is such a key part of our state's resources, and we want to develop technologies that help with water. So those are our four priority areas. So if you or people you advise or companies that you know of are aerospace, bioscience, advanced computing, AI and quantum, or advanced energy and water technologies, then they really should reach out to the Technology and Innovation Office for any sort of assistance, guidance, things like that. We do have a process on our website where you can fill out an inquiry form. I'll get that into the chat in a little bit. That's a great first step. With those, we can do intake calls. There are about 3 to 5 of us here in the office that provide kind of a quick 20 to 30-minute call that can help you with resources, maybe some funding timing. A lot of times we know what the calendar looks like for the next few months in terms of grant opportunities or programs. And so we always recommend that your first step, plus it kind of gets you into our system for newsletters, special events, things that we're sponsoring and whatnot. So I highly recommend you'd either fill out a inquiry form for Economic Development TO office or sign up for our newsletter. When I'm done not talking and I get a couple of minutes to take a breath here, I'll put some of that stuff in the chat. I myself came from the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I most recently worked at West, which is a statewide nonprofit that's been here for 30 plus years, and it provided micro lending, business assistance, and incubation, one-on-one consulting to mostly women-owned small businesses or people that aspire to start and grow small businesses. And for the last 3 years there, before coming to the Technology and Innovation Office in December of last year, I was the director of the incubator there, and it was one of the 9 state certified incubators in New Mexico. So that's kind of my personal experience. And before West, I worked in advertising and marketing for about 18 years for 2 different companies, national companies here in New Mexico. I've been in New Mexico since 1993. I raised my kids here, and I'm not going anywhere. And I love New Mexico, and I love the opportunity that I have with the state to help grow and diversify our economy into those technology high priority sectors that we govern here in the Technology and Innovation Office. That being said, I can introduce specifically this grant now, John, or we can go into your questions or however you'd like to do it.
Um, well, most of my questions are about the grant. So how about we jump in and you can, introduce this grant specifically and
Sure.
we'll see where the questions fall.
Okay. So the grant we're talking about today is called the SBIR Matching Grant. That's kind of a short form of what it is. It is for either SBIR or STTR grantees. So people who have already won a SBIR or STTR grant, either phase 1 or phase 2, from any of the 11 federal agencies that provide those grants. That, is a grant system and a grant opportunity that's outside of our state. It's federal, as you may know, if you're either looking to get it or you've already received it. But something that a lot of people don't know when they get those competitive federal grants is that they don't cover expenses related to business development. So it's really an R&D grant. Your SBIR, STTR grants are competitive federal grants that support small businesses engaged in research and development with potential for commercialization. Those federal grants cover costs associated with R&D, but do not cover expenses related to business development. Like ineligible costs for your federal grant are things like marketing, any sort of salaries that go to business operations. You are not allowed to spend that money in those categories. So being a organization with the state of New Mexico that's trying very hard to commercialize and expand our economic opportunities in the state, the TO, our Technology Innovation Office, we've developed this grant to actually provide matching funds for your grants, your SBIR, STTR federal grants that actually will cover those things. So the New Mexico SBIR, STTR matching grant provides recipients additional resources to commercialize your technology that you're developing with the federal funding. It leverages that federal funding you've already achieved. And these technologies have already, for example, been vetted by the federal government. Getting an SBIR, STTR is not easy. So in some ways, you've done all the hard work already. We kind of come in on the back end and say, here's some additional state dollars. Let's get those marketing. Let's get those important business development meetings. Let's get you going to present your technology and your innovation for the potential of commercialization and helping build your company, either in sales, marketing, operations, things like that. And you've already been awarded that proof of concept and R&D activities that you've done through the federal government, and we're just a state level matching program to lead with follow-on funding, stimulate your business growth and expansion, help your company generate some wealth. We're non-dilutive. We don't take any stake in your company, of course, and in the long term and medium term, it helps build this tax revenue and the commercial viability of your company, right? We're providing that kind of support, that base, the kind of jumping off point so that you can, I don't want to say, it's like an exponential boost with these dollars that you're already getting. So that's really the general purpose of the grant. I should mention that when we say matching grant, we provide up to $50,000 for a phase 1, and we provide up to $100,000 for a phase 2. And many of these awards you're getting from the federal government are actually in excess of that. So in some cases, we're not truly matching. For example, if you got a phase two for $125,000, as the program exists right now, we're just going to match up to $100,000. And it's also dependent on your application. If you ask for $100,000 and in your application you only justify $75,000, you're probably just going to get $75,000. So it's kind of an up to $100,000 for phase two matching and up to $50,000 for a phase one. Now that's how we've run these grants in the past years. I've only got kind of a little less than 1 year under my belt managing this grant. And so I do want to say also as a caveat that, we meet as a department periodically. We look at the grant, we see how we can improve the grant. So the next iteration of this grant, which we have tentatively scheduled for kind of an October timeframe, um, it may look just slightly different in terms of the amounts, the number of awards, and those kinds of things. So I'm just talking, really about how we've done it in the past, and there might be some slight adjustments. So nothing's really set in stone, but in the past we've matched up to $50,000 for a phase one and up to $100,000 for a phase two. The objective of the program is to get you closer or expand upon your market entry, your customer acquisition, your business expansion, and ultimately, the job creation. That's what we're trying to do. Create more jobs, bigger companies here in New Mexico, keep those technologies, keep those innovations here in the state, and avoid, what historically has been more of a brain drain, more of people just taking their companies out of the state, and keep those companies here. And that's really our goal. So it's really intended to accelerate the commercialization, knowing what the federal grant does not allow you to do, and kind of filling those gaps. Does that help for an introduction?
Yes, it does.
Hmm.
And you've answered a couple of my questions here, so just
Great, no problem.
to follow up on those. Um, Eligibility for the grant is being a New Mexico-based business and having an SBIR already awarded.
That's correct. And then
Right? Okay.
there are some, slight caveats. For example, yeah, it has to be have been awarded. There's some technical things about if you got an SBIR and it ended, it has to have ended, within the last 3 months for you to be eligible. So if you got an SBIR in 2022, that's not eligible for a matching grant. But if your SBIR grant ended, or let's just say hypothetically, it ends in, September 15th, and this grant opportunity opens October 15th, then you are eligible. So it has to be kind of, if your SBIR closed within 3 months of this grant opportunity being presented again, then you're going to be able to do it.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
And so I've got another question that sort of piggybacks off of that. So at what point in the SBIR process should companies start thinking about applying for the state matching fund?
Well, so there's two kind of answers to that. Number one is, we're only opening the window for applications for about 4 weeks. That's typically what we do is offer a 4 week. And like I said, we are always looking to develop and improve our grant process. So I don't want to say that maybe someday this wouldn't actually be a rolling application opportunity, in which case I'd have a different answer for you, John. But right now, these are not rolling opportunities. They're not open all year. And so, as soon as you get an SBIR, STTR, phase one or phase two, you should look into our website, do your inquiry form, reach out via email or however else you might reach out and let us know you've got the grant because, we want to help celebrate, your successes and whatnot and kind of get you on this imaginary list. But really, you're going to have to kind of keep your eyes peeled for when we open the grant. And the other part of your question is, when you say start preparing or start what have you, the application is going to be an online process. It's fairly simple. I don't want to say, it's a slam dunk if you've gotten the grant, but typically, if you've received this grant federally, as I mentioned earlier, you're already vetted, you're already of value, so to speak, to the federal government. So we're going to want to try and fund you. And then we'll have certain criteria in the grant process where the more competitive and better you can make your package, and I can talk a little bit about that as well. You're going to want to make it as competitive as you can because you'll be competing with other New Mexico businesses. And so really, just start thinking about ways that you can commercialize and use business development dollars. And as soon as you get your SBIR grant, and this is one of the harder parts because most of your R&D and scientific, lab-based or research-based technologies, they need to, what this grant does is help commercialize it. And so that's kind of a separate thing, right? The business development, the sales, the marketing, that's kind of a separate thing. So my advice, and this is just general advice, is once you get your SBIR to do those R&D activities, start, keeping notes, keeping a log, thinking about maybe meeting with some business development resources, people at Arrowhead, people at incubators, people at business assistance organizations, chambers of commerce, things like that, that can kind of help you on the commercialization and marketability of your product, or your, where your research is, because that's going to make you more competitive for this grant. The better your business development plan is, the better the way you present how you're going to use funds to grow jobs, grow revenues, get your product to market, get your TRL, your technology readiness level, up so that you are more commercializable. That's going to really give you a heads up, I mean, kind of a hand up in the application process. And so I would say as you get these SBIR grants, the quicker you think specifically about the commercialization and the marketability, the better off you are.
Fantastic. Is there a limit to how many of these grants a business can be awarded?
So an individual business, no, there's not a limit. However, you have to have, received a new grant, right? You can't get this grant over and over again based on a single SBIR award. But for example, hypothetically, you can get an SBIR phase one, get our TO matching grant, get an SBIR phase two, get a TO matching grant. Maybe you get another SBIR second phase two, another matching grant, as far as it exists right now. And like I said, as we re-examine and look at these, those things might adjust and change. But what I can tell you is when we present the new grant opening, which as of now is scheduled for kind of an October timeframe, we're going to do a few things. We're going to immediately make the grant manual available online on our website, and you can read the grant manual, typically a 4 to 6 page document. It's not all legalese. It's very understandable. It has the kind of outlines, the limitations, the rules, and things like that. It has how to apply. We're going to do a webinar as well, typically 7 to 10 days after the grant opportunity opens. And all of our grants are opened and applications are all done through the submittable.com application, which is a web app, very user friendly. So about 7 to 10 days, we'll have a webinar just very similar to this, specifically about our grant, where you are going to be presented with the grant manual. You are going to get a kind of a slideshow of successes and how to do a good job of your application. You're going to be able to ask questions. We're going to be available for the entirety of like the 4 weeks that the grant is open. And you can call us, do a Teams meeting, any sort of thing about your application. We want to help you along with your application. So you'll have plenty of opportunities if any of these things kind of change slightly. But as of right now, no, there are no limits to how many times, as long as you keep getting those SBIR national awards. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's look at that application process a little bit more. It sounds like, based on your description so far, the application process is fairly simple. What type of documentation would a company need to be able to apply?
Okay, so let's see. The basically this is all about the eligibility, right? So you have to have an active federal SBIR, STTR phase one or phase two, or once again, I mentioned be within 3 months of having ended your phase one with the intention of applying for a phase two. You must be headquartered in New Mexico. So, you can't be an El Paso company. You can't be a Phoenix company. Even if you have like intentions to open an office, this grant is not for you. TO does have other grants for companies that are looking to open offices in New Mexico and things, but this is not one of those grants. Let's see, you have to have a BTIN number, an EIN, a NAICS code. So those kinds of things will be in the application. Those are fairly simple administrative things, but those are things you want to keep an eye on. If you're getting these kind of R&D, SBIR, STTR, grants, but you're doing it through a research team or under like a university kind of a situation, but you don't necessarily have a company formed, then this isn't for you. You're going to need to want to, in advance, kind of form your company, do all that kind of work to get a BTIN number from the state of New Mexico, have a NAICS code, and essentially be an actual company looking to expand, do business, increase revenue, increase the tax base and the jobs. Let's see. You have to, have staff in New Mexico. It can just be one or two people, but you've got to have staff in New Mexico, and you have to occupy a physical space. So any businesses with like a virtual headquarters in New Mexico or businesses that have more than 40% of your staff outside the state, you will not be considered. So if you are a two-person company and one person is in Boulder, Colorado, you are not eligible for this grant because that's 50%. And so you need to have essentially 60% in the state. You cannot have more than 40% outside the state. So those are some key things, kind of an eligibility thing. And we try to guide that application process so that you're saying those things in the application. Yes, 60% or more of my employees are in New Mexico. Yes, here's my BTIN number. That way you kind of don't do this whole application for nothing. Without those kind of eligibility things. You also have to be a for-profit technology business, a technology-based device, software, and we do prioritize those four sectors I mentioned earlier. So that's going to be part of the application process. The application is kind of fields you fill in with short answers, and it gives you an opportunity to upload a slide deck, a presentation deck, an application in the submittable platform can take anywhere from like, if you have all your materials and stuff, ready, it could take less than an hour. But a good application, you can do it over a series of days and you can spend 6, 8, 10 hours on it to just make sure everything's really looking good. And I think it will be a competitive process. Because this grant is becoming more and more popular. We're getting more and more SBIRs and STTRs in the state as we expand, these programs. And so I do think it will be competitive. The one key thing in terms of people, when you think about your technologies and what you do with your technology, is we always say that technology-enabled companies are not eligible. And this can be a difficult thing because in this wonderful new era of AI and advanced computing, a lot of people are saying like, I'm a real estate company that uses AI to, match the right home to the right person. To us, that is a real estate company. That is not a technology company, right? And so that's one of the key eligibility kind of trip ups in your application. You're going to want to show and prove that you are a technology company. And to help make this clearer, because this is always a pretty big issue, I'd like to just mention kind of technology enabled companies here that would not be eligible. This is going to give you all a good opportunity to understand what I'm getting at. So, let's just give you an example. Business A is a small New Mexico business that, let's say they receive technical assistance from the labs. They're working on technology. They did like an SBA program, like we mentioned earlier, that small business assistance program, because they want to improve the process of compacting these wood chips to build dining room tables and furniture and hardwood furniture, because they want to improve this process of wood chip compression, right? But they sell products like dining tables, and it was developed with assistance from the labs. That is not a technology company. That is a furniture company. Did they use technology to enable and help them? And are they innovative? Sure. But, they're probably not getting an SBI or STTR. Let's not kid each other. But that is not an eligible company when we say it can't be just technology enabled. Another one would be, technically they're like a home builder or a construction company, but they build only LEED certified homes that use just the utmost in cutting edge innovation and technology to build super efficient homes. That is not a technology company in terms of the way we're going to fund through our grants. So those are just two kind of concrete examples of what we mean. And so if you're fundamentally not a tech company, but you're using technology to enable your kind of other categorized company, then you would not be eligible. And so those are kinds of things that are in the application where we ask you to, state what your technology is, how it's uh, high tech or deep tech or innovative. We want you to be clear on that. The other thing in the application itself is, you're going to have a lot of your paperwork, kind of state and federal paperwork at the ready. So things like a W-9 form. Our state processes can be administratively lengthy, and we have our particular things the way it works, because we're state government, because we have certain forms. But we're going to provide that all for you. We provide you kind of a pre-approved W-9 that we use from the state of New Mexico, and we want you to fill that out. And so we wind up, making ineligible otherwise good applications because they've just grabbed a regular W-9 off the IRS website and filled that out. No, we want you to use the state of New Mexico W-9. We want you to get a letter of good standing from the state of New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department. And this is a classic mistake that people can make in their applications where they provide a letter of good standing from the Secretary of State saying that they have, an LLC in the state. And that's great. That shows that you filed the correct paperwork to have an LLC with the Secretary of State of the state of New Mexico. But that is not a letter of good standing saying you don't owe any taxes to the state of New Mexico. That is something that can only be got from the Taxation and Revenue Department. So we're asking for that. So those are things that we ask you to, have a PDF of, upload in the system so that when we do your application, we know you're ready to be funded, that you don't have any tax burden, that you have all your kind of ducks in a row administratively. And those are the things, quite honestly, that wind up sinking some otherwise good applications and things. And I can tell you that, when the application window opens in is a month, give yourself a week or two to get your stuff done and then apply early. We do have a lot of heartaches with people the day before or the day of. These applications typically close at 5 p.m. They're calling us desperate at 3:30. They're calling us at 4:15. That's a very difficult situation. So another advice in the application process is to do it early, discover any issues or questions you might have, and then just reach out to us, especially 2 weeks early, 1 week early. That would be wonderful. Judging from some of the recent, iterations that we've done, a lot of the hangups could really be helped if it wasn't last minute, that kind of thing. You have to, the other one really harder aspect in this application and in your pitch, in your slide deck, you've got to show that you're planning on using this money. At least 51% of your federal funds are spent in New Mexico. We don't want you to, for example, spend 51% of your money or 75% of your money using consultants from California, paying a scientist to write a paper in Colorado, a white paper for you to improve. We want you to put that money into New Mexico. We're the state of New Mexico. We're economic development. We want you to use that in New Mexico. And then we require 31% or more, which is not a large burden, of our money, our 50K, our 100K that you have gotten from our grant to be spent in New Mexico. So we're just looking for a somewhat high percentage of those funds to be spent in New Mexico. And that's something that in your application where you're going to want to kind of present a case for like how you're going to spend it. We're going to do a branding package with an agency in Albuquerque, in Santa Fe, that kind of thing. We're going to, hire a contractor to do business development and use LinkedIn to find a list of 100 contacts in the community, but that person's in New Mexico and we're paying them, with this funds to do work in New Mexico. So that's another aspect of the application that you're going to want to show that is pretty important. And then the last thing about the application is there's eligible funds usage and ineligible, and they're pretty black and white. And so if your application says, here's how we're going to spend your $50,000, we're going to do payroll, we're going to do R&D, we're going to buy lab equipment. Those are all ineligible uses. That's what we want you to use your federal funds for because that allows for it. So I'm going to give you a quick list. It's really important to remember what's eligible and what's ineligible. So eligible funding use is intellectual property assessment, IP, lawyers, patent filing, outside lab testing and validation, regulatory assessment, any sort of like certifications you're looking to get, meeting with customers, business development, maybe even like a small amount, like 10% or less, spent on like attending a trade show. Those are eligible uses. You can't use more than 10% at like trade shows. You can't use all $50,000 to travel the world. I'd love to let you do that. So we kind of keep a cap at 10%, but that's still a nice amount of funds to be able to go to a key industry event in Boston, in San Diego, what have you. Um, and you can do market research, data acquisition. You can buy databases. You can look at a list of, scientists that are going to be target consumers of your products. And you can buy all that. Those are all eligible funding uses. So your best application is going to describe how you're going to spend your money in those areas. And then the ineligible uses are going to be things like payroll. You cannot use this for payroll. You cannot use it for the R&D. That's what your federal funds are for. You cannot use it for materials or supplies over $100. So these are kind of major materials and supplies. That's what your federal funds are for. You can't use it for business equipment, furniture, lab equipment, machinery. That's what your federal funds are for. And of course, as with any state funding, you're not going to be able to use it for like food, alcohol, drugs, anything like that. The food one's hard. Hopefully the alcohol and drug one's not too hard. So if you are having an event, like let's say you're having an open house in your lab to bring customers in, to bring other partners in, you can expense the marketing of that event. You can expense other aspects of that event, but you can't expense, the food from that event, for example. So that's just a hard and fast rule with the state. No food, no drugs, no alcohol are eligible for funding. So that's another part of the application that's really important is that if you say we're going to use this 25,000, 25,000 of the money to help boost our R&D and buy an extra two pieces of equipment, that's not a very good application because those are ineligible uses of the funding.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the rundown on all of that. And it sounds like you've got, several forms that are going into this. And I know anybody here that's familiar with SBIR and STTR, there's quite a bit that goes into that. And then you have a decent waiting period. First, before you've got the notice of award, but then even longer after that, still before you actually get the funding. So I was curious, Mark, how long does the review process take on these applications before you get notice of award? And then how long from that do you get the funding?
Sure. Well, let me just say I'm fully aware that it seems like forever. You send your application in and you wait and you wait and you wait. I only have the experience of kind of co-managing and co-administering about two grants this year in 2026. And so I'm only speaking from the recent experience, but we've gotten pretty good at turning these around. So we typically have a 4-week process of applying. Then when the applications close within the next, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, we are making the decision and notifying the awardee. Okay. So that's kind of a loose, rough thing is about 2 to 3 weeks. Now, to give you just some insight into how, the sausage is made, we do an internal review where eligibility is the key, right? And that's going to be things like, did you follow the directions? Do you have all your paperwork straight? Does your budget make sense? Did you choose any ineligible things? Those are fairly quick decisions, right? So we can kind of, let's just say hypothetically, we get 25 applications. 5 or 8 or 10 of these might get eliminated in day 3 after it closes because we see that eligibility wise, they just didn't, make it happen. And they did it wrong per se, that just to say they kind of did it, the applicant did it wrong. After that, it becomes a little more lengthy. With some of the technology, we're not experts. We're administrators. We do have nice knowledge. We're in the ecosystem, but we aren't scientists here. And so we do on occasion, and I wasn't part of the SBIR matching grant for this last year in this process. I came along in the middle of it. But for example, our Quantum Technologies Award, which we'll be announcing next week, which is very exciting, there was a phase of the review process where we actually sent the applications and the simple slide decks off to scientists at Los Alamos, at Sandia, and they do what's called a technical review. And they tell us if the technology makes sense, right? Now, luckily with the SBIR matching grant, the federal government has kind of already done that for us. So in my estimation, there's really no need for that kind of technical review. But if you ever hear in the ecosystem, boy, TO takes a long time with our application. I mean, their application closed on September 15th, and we didn't hear till November 1st, and 6 weeks, that's a long time. If you ever hear things like that, probably it's because we got so many good applications, but then we have to send them off after eligibility to kind of a technical review. And these are very busy scientists. That is not their primary job. And so, but we do take that part very seriously. And so that could cause, not, I don't want to say delays, but that's a further part of the vetting of your amazing technology and ideas. As I mentioned with the SBIR matching, it's probably not part of it because you've already been vetted by the federal government, by any of those 11 agencies in the Department of the, DOW or what have you, with Navy saying this is a technology we need. We're not going to go and say, well, we don't trust the Navy. We're going to send this off to our guy and see if they think it's good. Hypothetically. So anyway, that seems like that would quicken, the process. And then after that, the longest delay in the process is really getting any sort of vendor set up in our system so that you can receive money. And I will say that, let me try and think of when some of these grants closed. Um, I think your best answer is you hear positive, indications, especially things like, we need your W-9, you know, uh, straightened out. We've submitted your vendor, stuff. Those things you'll start hearing like 3 to 6 weeks after the grant ends. And then we've been giving funds. Historically, we've given half of the funds up front. And then after you do your periodic check-ins and your expense reports, 3 months and 6 months in, you get the other half of funds. Sometimes, depending on the timing of the fiscal year, we have administered some grants where you receive all the funding up front. And so in those cases, merely, 6 to 8 weeks after you started or ended the process with the application, you might receive these funds in your, ACH in your bank account with a check or what have you. So I think that that's pretty quick. But I realize to you, the applicants, to the people that get awarded, they kind of it seems like it takes forever. But I would say those are probably your time ranges, 2 to 3 weeks to find out kind of where you are in the process and to realize, okay, I'm in this thing, and then another, 3 to 5 weeks to where you get your either first check or you get the entirety of the check.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
I think I'll probably only bug you with about one or two more questions, and we'll get
Okay.
the questions that are in the chat here.
Yeah, sure.
And I know that you haven't been in the position for a terribly long time, but I wanted to ask if you have either seen or heard of companies that you think use these funds in a particularly effective way and a particularly ineffective way.
Well, I can tell you that I've had experience with 5 awardees. I currently administer and have great communication back and forth with 5 awardees. And I can tell you that last year's grant had 12 applicants and 5 were awarded. So that's a pretty good gauge for everyone on the call, right? So maybe, up to maybe half the people that apply may get awarded, which is kind of nice. Now, if we had 50 applicants, first of all, that would be amazing. If we had 50 people in New Mexico getting these SBIR phase ones and phase twos, I would love that. I'm not quite sure that 25 would get it. Maybe we'd still be down around 10 or 15 or what have you, hypothetically. But that's the gauge for last year. 12 great companies applied and 5 were awarded. And of these 5 awardees that I've had the privilege since December, January, since I've been here at TO, to kind of talk about their successes, talk about how they've used their funds. The best ones are ones that really take business development. I don't want to say seriously because everybody takes business development seriously, but the ones that use the funds and are able to leverage kind of their abilities and whoever they kind of get to help them's abilities to um, to network, to do sales and marketing development. So companies are doing it first of all to like do a website. That's very good use, right? Those are eligible funds that fall under marketing. And being able to when you develop a website, when you use somebody that's like a very good, vetted kind of a website builder, and they ask you questions like, why would I buy your product? Why does this help the market? Where is this innovative? Who are your major competitors? These are all marketing questions and business development questions that can kind of be best answered and presented in the form of like a website. Okay. And so people that are using some funds up front for that, they are being now within weeks, right? Let's say they take 2 to 3 months to get this website set up. Immediately, they can start saying in business development, go to our website. We have an inquiry form, and they're building lists of potential customers. They're finding out metrics. How many people are hitting it? Where are our inquiries coming from? So that is one example of good use. A second example is to, be flexible about which ecosystem events will help you the most, which networking and conferences might help you the most, and go be at those and present. Use your money to get some of these simple marketing materials like flyers and a table wrap, for your booth at a pretty big event. If you're already in the ecosystem and you're already seeing, oh, there's a big space conference up in Santa Fe. If we're part of that, we can be seen by 250 government contractors that'll be interested in our technology. We should go up there and do that. That's a good use of those funds. So people that really very early on kind of step outside the R&D, step outside the technology, and are either able to get help with business development or have the internal capacity and somebody on board that can kind of take on those tasks. That's the best use of the funds. Getting ready to enter the marketplace, being marketable, and doing business development, sales, and marketing. I think those are just great uses. That's a lot of the stuff. Let's face it, when you're a scientist, when you're in the lab, when you're developing the technology, that's not really the same skill set as selling, as having the more simple words to talk about your technology, to put yourself in the eyes of the consumer, in the eyes of the customer. Those are the best uses of the money, in my opinion.
Well, thank you for that.
Mhm.
And then I've got one more question here for you, and it should be pretty simple for you. Um, where can companies go to learn more about the program and to get assistance on this application process?
Sure. Let's see. So we have, the TO section of our website. Let me see if I can kind of click off here and just put it in there. Let's see. There's TO. Um, good. Um, Let's do this. So, I mean, the Economic Development New Mexico website is very user friendly. There's a section called Funding Opportunities, and grants, and that's a great way to get in and look at what the entire state, but really just edd.newmexico.gov is your first step. And then if you go to divisions, there's a TO division, Technology and Innovation Office, and I'll drop it right in here in the chat. Um, and that's going to be your best, first stop. And it even like the very first page says now open science and technology business startup grants. And these are grants that are very kind of entry level grants. And it actually, the application's closed 5 p.m. on Tuesday night. So it's not quite open. We'll update that. But it talks about the grant programs, and the SBIR STTR matching grant is the very first one on that page as you scroll down a little bit, and it starts immediately with eligible and ineligible. It has the list of the past awardees, and you can find out everything you need to know about those grants. And I want to say, just to be frank, our department has expanded. We used to be a 2-person department, now we're a 9-person department. And so I anticipate more frequent grant opportunities, expanded grant opportunities over the next, 6, 12, 18 months. And so you should try to sign up for our mailing list and be apprised of those kinds of things. Let me see if I can put the sign up for updates. Here we go. I'm going to open that up. Let me get this going. I've got this for you in resources. Here we go. I'm going to drop in the newsletter. There we go. And right here, oops, sorry about this. Copy. All right, and this is going to be where to do our newsletter. It takes you directly to the newsletter sign up. Wait, is that what it did? Yeah, that's going to take you right to the sign up. Even though the link looks the same, it's a different URL. So that second link is going to take you right into the sign up for updates where you can put your email. And I think it's a monthly newsletter, and we send out periodic bulletins as well when new grants open. So those are the best ways to get in touch with us and to see what we are doing for that. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark, for answering all of my questions. We've got some questions in the chat here that I can read them out to you, or you can read them on your own. It's up to you. But this
Yeah,
first here, uh,
go ahead.
my company is funded through a BAA, not SBIR. This is because our funding source believes that we'll make hardware and manufacture. The way the program exists, companies like ours, slightly more mature than those receiving SBIR and STTR grants, but there aren't available funds for us. Is there any program by which New Mexico might support us for job manufacturing growth?
Yeah, there are a lot of programs. I mean, the two that come to mind, the one that really comes to mind is JTIP, which pays up to half of the salaries for employees that you might want to add to your manufacturing to scale up. Your best bet, and I'm not sure exactly where you're located, but the Economic Development New Mexico, we have what's known as regional reps, right? And that's our kind of business expansion and retention programs. And this is kind of like the bread and butter of what EDNM does. And this is not my department, but we have our state broken up into regions. So depending on where you are, you're going to have one or two people that are your what we call regional reps, and they are going to be able to help you walk you through these programs that they have. And so that's your best bet is to kind of go to the economic development website. And let me see where there, community development. There we go. And so you're going to go to this website that I'm putting into the chat. And that is what we call our community, business, and rural development. And like I said, or it's called regional representatives. So we just call them regional reps. And every part, it's going to take you to a map of how the state is. Albuquerque, Bernalillo, Valencia, Torrance County. We're Region 3. Your two reps are Len Romano and Beth Waldrip. These are the people that are helping companies expand their operations, especially manufacturing. And then the second one would be MEP. And I know a lot of us are familiar with the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and they're kind of a subset of a federal program, and they often will find the more federal grants, not necessarily the state of New Mexico ones, but those are kind of my first two. All that being said, if you're in advanced manufacturing, if you're using advanced computing or kind of a deep tech with your manufacturing, you should feel free to apply to some of our grants as well, especially the Science and Technology Startup Grant, which did close this last Tuesday, but should be offered again this year. My guess is kind of a maybe October, November timeframe. And although this one closed, I'll put it in the chat. This is kind of your quickest way to get that's the technology and science and technology startup grant. That's your best way to kind of get those funds, 25K, 50K, to kind of give yourself a boost. And these are going to be offered typically once or twice a year, and they're a more kind of I don't want to say entry level, but they're a more accessible grant that doesn't have quite the burden of having received an SBIR, STTR, of having those larger things in place. So that might be a good opportunity as well. But I would look at MEP as well. MEP has a lot of resources, a lot of know-how, and they're just a great resource for any sort of advanced manufacturing or any manufacturing. What else is in the chat?
We've got another one here that I think you
Yeah.
touched on earlier, so maybe just a quick recap. Can these matching funds be utilized for staff salaries? Are there any restrictions?
Yeah, and so we did say that now. It cannot be used for payroll. That's the rule. And so I know, everybody tries to say, well, what about 1099 contractors? What about what's the way around this? But essentially, payroll is payroll. If you use a contractor to do something and it's reasonable and it's within the scope of kind of what they do and they're not on your payroll, then that's not payroll. Um, but I know the IRS in the state of New Mexico, Taxation and Revenue Department, has pretty strict rules about what's a contractor and what's not a contractor. And so I don't get involved in that, but I will tell you that you cannot use it for salaries. You cannot use it for payroll. So that would answer that one for sure. Then I see another question underneath it that says, what if a company has two simultaneous SBIRs? I'm going to jot that one down. I honestly don't know, but I can just say kind of casually here, if you've got two separate SBIRs, then I think you should feel free to apply twice because the money's going to be going to the two different things. But if it's two SBIRs for kind of the same technology and the same thing, then probably not. But I'm gonna ask for further help on that one from some of my more experienced colleagues, and find out what the story is with that because that is something that I've not been presented with.
I will
And
say simply, just talking about the SBIR side, if you're able to get to, you should have two separate scopes of work.
yeah, there you
They
go.
might all be directed toward the same major end goal, but you would have at the very least two separate scopes of work for the two different projects.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, on a very basic logic level, uh, we want to match your SBIR grants, and if you have two SBIR federal grants, then we want to match you twice because the whole purpose of this grant is these funds boost. These funds boost what you're already doing, what's already been vetted, what's already going to be good use of R&D. We want to help commercialize, grow the jobs, grow the tax base, and keep this going in New Mexico. And we feel like that's the best way to do it. So if you get two with two different scopes of work for two different purposes, then in theory, we want to give you twice those funds to help boost both things. But I will double check on that.
Awesome. Now we got someone asking about a no-cost extension. So if they get a no-cost extension on their SBIR, does your 3-month window for being able to apply for these matching funds, does that happen at the end of the original period of performance or at the end of the no-cost extension?
Yeah, that's a pretty specific one. I mean, John, would you help me understand? No cost extension means like you've got an extension to do more work, but so the technical period of your SBIR has been extended, but you're not getting any more funds from the federal government. Is that what that is?
That's right. So no extra funding, but you are allowed more time to use the funding you already received.
Yeah, I mean, without knowing, I'll have to talk to my more experienced colleagues. But if your SBIR date has literally technically been extended by the federal government, I don't see any reason why we would have a problem with that. The work that you're doing has an extension date. You can probably use that NCE period end date to start your 3-month window. I don't think we'd have a problem with that if you put that in your application. I don't see why that would make you ineligible. According to the federal government, you're still working on the SBIR and it has a new end date. We can honor that end date, but I'm just giving you the logical answer, not the official answer. But I jotted that one down as well to get you a better answer. But I don't see why you wouldn't be eligible for that extension. Yeah.
We've got another one here. So in a phase two SBIR, the period of performance could run from 12 months out to 30 months potentially. In the case of a 30-month period of performance, does the $100,000 matching fund go for the duration of the phase two, or is it strictly for the first 12 months?
Yeah. Boy, this is a tough one. And hi, Curtis. It's good to see you here. Our grant programs are going to be essentially a 12/13 month program. 12 months to spend the funds. We give you an extra month to kind of finish your reporting. Give us that last report of how the program worked for you. We give you a little bit of leeway to just kind of write up that what we call report B or our final report. I don't see that changing. So I do think there is going to be the burden, and we'll clearly outline that in the grant manual. We'll shore it up. I didn't see it in the old grant manual from last May of 2025. I didn't see that specifically mentioned. Um, uh, and so don't forget when you apply to us, you're saying this is what we're trying to achieve in the 12 months of your grant, TO, EDNMTO. And we're trying to achieve these milestones. We will check in with you quarterly or biannually to see that we're meeting these milestones, and we will be done in 12 months. That's kind of how we work. So the short answer is to say, you're going to have to try to find in your application a way to give yourself a good 12-month, head start and use our funds in those first 12 months, which frankly, I shouldn't be difficult because it's 12 months and it's not $1.2 million. It's 50K or 100K or somewhere in there. And we hope you can use those funds in 12 months. I hate to open this can of worms, but on rare occasion, we have offered an extension of a few months, something like that. And so typically you're going to want to get this done in 12 months, and that's going to be our program years. We're a state agency, we're a state organization. We run within a fiscal year, within a program year. And so we've got to be kind of accountable to those funds in each fiscal year. And so my quick answer to say, you're probably still only just going to get that 12 or 13-month grant period to get those funds spent. But I'll jot that one down and find out, because you're right. SBIR phase 2 of 30 months, that gives you a lot of leeway. But I think our funds, the matching part, will still have to be done in the 12 months.
I happen to have a follow-up on that one, just
Yeah.
personally. If you have that period of performance of 30 months or even just the 24 months, and uh, you have the possibility of applying for the matching funds that the state's offering. If you don't get it on the first round, if you still have the ability to apply for a second round based on that SBIR period performance, could you apply twice?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason why not, unless, and we'll put that in the grant manual for sure. But if you're still within, the grant application and the grant manual says if you've been awarded in an SBIR, if you're currently in an award or 3 months, beyond, you are eligible. So yes, if you didn't get it the first time, if there was something wrong with your application, if it was just too highly competitive, and you didn't, rise to the top in the review process, then yeah, you certainly should be able to apply again. I'll jot that one down, but as of right now, there's nothing in the grant manual as I've read it, which is, let me flip through, which is about 6 pages of kind of qualifications and explanations. There's nothing in there that says you can't.
Well, thank you. Now we've got one here. You've touched on it before, but this person says that they had a little trouble logging in at the beginning. So can you just quickly recap? Do you need to have an active SBIR before applying? And if so, can you apply for these matching funds immediately after receiving a notice of award from SBIR?
Yes. You should have an approved SBIR. That's a requirement. You have to be approved. And yeah, as soon as you get that notice of award I mean, an NOA from the federal government is as far as I'm concerned, legally binding. You should be able to get those matching funds from us. That's not a problem. Yep, that's how I see it. Yeah.
We've got one when applying for SBIR, and this really may be more of a question for me, but if you've got some insights, that would certainly be helpful.
Yeah.
When applying for SBIR, how do I secure agreements from New Mexico partners, for example, NMSU or federal? Should I do that before applying to SBIR, and is there a method of ensuring that partners will actually show up and not just hand out an empty promise?
Hmm.
That one may be more for me.
Yeah, honestly, I really don't know the kind of ins and outs of how to best get it, but I know, John, I've attended probably 3 or 4 of your webinars where you talk a lot about this. And so, yeah, if you could just answer that, I'd probably be better off. Yep.
um, I'll address that one in just a minute after we get through the stuff that's specifically about the matching piece, and we can let you get on your way.
Yeah, sounds good.
We started developing our business project about a year ago. Are there EDD grants that companies less than 3 years in business can apply for? Working with NMSU and the Arrowhead Center, we are successful in obtaining an NMSBA grant.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, that New Mexico Science and Technology Business Startup Grant is kind of that entry level is the wrong word. That's that kind of first stair step for your kind of TO grants. It's a simple process. We offer it a couple times a year. I hate to say this, but it did close Tuesday night. So you're about like a week behind on asking this. Maybe you got an application in or something, but that's probably going to be your best bet in this very, very early. These are companies, I mean, some of the companies that applied had literally got their LLC in like March or April. You know, I mean, these are people that are coming out of UNM, coming out of New Mexico State, coming out of New Mexico Tech, and saying, "Hey, I just developed this thing in the lab, and my lab supervisor, my principal investigator, my professor say this has real potential, but I don't know where to go." There's a couple of things. First of all, there's a lot of support organizations around the state that will help with kind of the business development aspect, how to form a company, how to do IP, some of the more consultative parts. That's not, I mean, we can help direct you to some of those services by going to our EDNM website and filling out the business assistance request, filling out an inquiry form, having a short call with us. So that's kind of a first step, to really get more seasoned in the business aspect of things. But secondarily, being like a young company, a year old, something like that, is to really apply for this Science and Technology Startup Award, the Business Startup Grant, because that's really for those early stage companies that are, I don't want to say kind of more of a wish and a dream, but they're really starting a plan. They're not multiple years down the road of executing their plan. They really want to start with a plan, and so that's the grant, the Business and New Mexico Science and Technology Business Startup Grant is the name of that one. And that would be the best first place to start. And I did put that in the link in the last link that I put at 9:50. If you scroll up in the chat, you'll see that one. What else?
And this one may be another question for me, but we'll see, if you've got anything here for us. Do you have any suggestions for university or federal lab partners interested in transformational physical AI? Saying that they're
Mm.
at the simulation phase right now.
So I can't think of any off the top of my head, but Mike, I can tell you that if you go to our website and fill out the business assistance request, we have, and this program, which we call here internally, is called BAP, which is Business Assistance Program. We for this last year, we ran a pilot program where TO, our office had a program where we had partners that were awarded. Assistance contracts from us to do exactly this, to help people in these fields. And we had a bioscience one, we had an advanced computing one, we had an advanced energy one. And these are like community partners that have either their own companies, they're part of a consortium, or what have you, and they are a resource, and you could kind of get one-on-one consulting time with them. That program did end. We're doing a post-mortem on that program, and we're going to kind of launch the 2.0 version of that. So I hate to say this, but sign up for our newsletter, keep your eyes peeled. But this is one of those things that we have done on a trial basis because of people just like you that are saying, I just need this kind of connection, this person that can be a resource for me in this area. And so while I can't refer you to the exact contractor that we've had for the last 12 months, because that program did close and it wouldn't be fair, that does exist. And you should fill out our report and we can kind of guide you towards that. And then secondarily, I do know there's this organization called the NMAIC. Let me put it in the chat, which is the AI Consortium. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're a great organization. And they do exactly this. And they have monthly meetups. I've been to a few of them. And that's a great place to network and to either ask this question or to find out like exactly who can help you out on that. And it's literally an AI consortium, people from the labs, people from the universities that are doing this great networking, business development kind of work. And so I would seek NMAIC for that stuff.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We got another question. Hypothetically, if approved for other state grants, potentially the technology startup grant, could you win multiple awards using that technology startup grant as well as and SBIR matching as well.
Yep. I hate to put participant Curtis on the spot here, but Curtis Ford, who asked a question in the chat, he was a simultaneous award winner with both an SBIR matching grant for this year and the Science and Technology Startup as well. So yes, now two separate applications, two different purposes, two different evaluations. So you can't just kind of copy paste and say, "Hey, I got this one. Give me that money too." You've got to do a thoughtful approach to your application, and it's another competitive process. But yes, it's possible, and it's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to, I know the words, it's not a word, but like exponentialize. We're trying to like compound those monies and the direction of your company because what we've seen through studies, through the ecosystem, through successes in other areas, other states, that is the best way. Yes, get this award, get that award because you're doing all this great work and you are all the innovators and the technologists in our state. If we can compound the successes by offering multiple grants that you're eligible for, it pays dividends down the road for us to fund you in as many different ways as we can. So yes, that it is possible to get multiple grants.
Awesome. We've got one more in the chat. Is there a requirement for how long a business has been in business?
No,
Before
there
that,
is not. You just have to have those requirements. So as I mentioned, do you have an EIN from the IRS, a federal EIN? Do you have a NAICS code? Do you have a business formation structure and a tax and revenue ID number, your BTIN? And I can tell you from my old experience working at West for 7 years is if you find the right helper or you're pretty savvy at navigating these things online, you can all do that. You can do all of that business formation in literally a day and a half. You can get the EIN number emailed to you in 5 minutes. You can form an LLC on the state website and get confirmation the next day. And you can use that information to get your tax and rev, your City of Albuquerque business license. You can get all this done in a day and a half. Now, you got to have some pretty good savvy or a helper with that. But no, there's no technical limitation. I will say, in all fairness, it's going to be part of the review process, right? So if we've got 50 applications and you formed your company last week, that might be part of the evaluation process, but it's not going to make you ineligible. You just have to have a company.
awesome. We did have one more that just
Hmm.
jumped in here. Can we go
Yeah, no problem.
outside of New Mexico for collaboration if we can't find suitable partners in New Mexico?
Yes, you can. However, if you're going to pay them, if you're going to pay those people out of the state, you're only 31% of our funds can be used on that. So it can't be a huge, large chunk. And don't forget, with your federal SBIR, they have a stipulation that 51% of your funds need to be spent in the state of New Mexico. So you'll kind of have that harder burden. So if you get 50K from us and you want to pay 20K, to this person in California who's going to be a key consultant or something, those funds are not going to be, we're going to have to either claw back those funds, which I hate to say, or, you're only going to be able to expense, that's 40%. So you're only going to be able to expense from our grant, you're only going to be able to be reimbursed 31% of that money. Um, uh, or 31% of the overall 50K. My math is off, but you see my point. And so yes, the answer is yes, but please be mindful of the limitations, and those will be in the grant manual and in the grant agreement. So after you successfully get or awarded this grant, we do some legal document signing where there's a grant agreement, and those things are in the grant agreement that you agree to spend only up to 31% outside of the state. And those kind of things. And we do periodic check-ins. I ask you to send me expense reports. I look at your receipts, and we do all that kind of auditing through our department to make sure that you fulfilled what your grant agreement and the legal documentation said you were going to do. But it's all upfront. It's not a high bar, but it is something you want to be mindful of. So technically, that's allowed.
Fantastic. Any other questions? You either put them in the chat or feel free to speak up while we've still got Mark here. I don't know that we have anyone jumping at it.
No.
But thank you so much, Mark, for
Mhm.
joining us today. I know that we've got a fairly long session here. We'll let you get on your way, assuming there aren't any other questions. And then
Sure.
I'll stick around and help to answer any questions about potentially some next steps, some SBIR
Yeah.
questions, anything like that.
Yeah, and let me leave you all with keep your eyes peeled on the TO part of the website. We have our our internal here like how the sausage gets made chart here in our department, and we are targeting kind of an October application period. So just keep that in mind. Maybe it moves up to September, but it should be about an October timeframe. So you can take a little rest here for a month or two, start thinking about how you're going to do it, and feel free to engage with us at any time. We want to be a resource for you, and as I mentioned at my previous, 7 years at West, and I know the work that Arrowhead and NM Fast do. The biggest advice I can give all of you is to use all of these resources that you can. Most of them are free. Many of them give you funds. Sign up for them all, use them all, because they are all part of improving your chances of success in the ecosystem with your business development, with your research. So please, please take advantage of any state programs, any regional programs, any nonprofit programs that anyone in your ecosystem offers, because they're really there for you. And the most success you'll find is when you leverage all these multiple programs over and over again to help you guys achieve those kind of technology and business development successes. So that's what I'll leave you with. Thank you all so much. And if there's any more questions that come up later, John, just reach out to me via email. And I'm so happy to be a part of this, and just let me know how I can help in the future.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks for coming and helping us out today.
No problem. Keep up the great work, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, everybody else, I'm going to stick around for as long as you need me to. But our session with Mark has ended. He's, of course, left the chat now. But if you have any questions about what we talked about, potentially some next steps, maybe some SBIR questions, please feel free to let me know, raise a hand, speak out, put them in the chat. That's what the rest of our time is going to be. So if you have any of those questions, again, feel free to ask those. And if not, thank you for coming today. We did have a couple of those questions earlier, so I'll go back up and answer those. One from Element of Depth, Russell. The best thing that I can advise you on here is getting a letter of support. So having a letter written saying that they are interested and that they are going to help you out. Once you get that signed, I mean, it's not a binding contract, so there is a chance that later they may not be willing to help you. But I've never seen that happen, especially if you're offering funding, right? If you are talking to a professor that you're interested in working with and you're offering a portion of an SBIR or an STTR and you get a letter of support, I have never seen any professor back out of funding or the potential to get some funding for their lab. And that's either NMSU or working with a national laboratory. So I think that's the best avenue there. If you're looking at SBIR and if you're writing them into the grant as a sub-awardee, funding going to the lab is going to keep them with you. We did have the second question here about any suggestions for university and federal lab partners, specifically for transformational physical AI. I think that what Mark said is a fantastic option to go in and check out, the resources that they have, either messaging the state and talking to the representatives that they have there, or reaching out to this New Mexico Artificial Intelligence Consortium. Uh, I would also say you feel free to look at the professors that we have, either NMSU, New Mexico Tech, UNM. Um, we we have people that are working on AI, but not everybody is going to have the expertise you're looking for specifically. Um, Once you find somebody that you're interested in talking to, just send them a cold email. Let them know what it is you're working on. See if they're interested in talking to you. Most professors will be interested. Um, I know that our national laboratories also have some pretty strong resources in that category. I would imagine reaching out to Sandia is probably a good first step. Los Alamos is also fantastic. I think that I've just heard more about AI's infrastructure at Sandia. Um, and I'm happy to help you out after this. You send me an email, follow up, let me know what it is you're looking for, and I can see what I could do to help you find some of those researchers or professors. Let's see a question here. Have phase one SBIR application started? USDA in New Mexico did not know. It depends on which agency you're talking about. So yes, phase ones have started to be released, but not all agencies have released them. I know Department of Transportation, Department of Education, Department of War. I think I saw in NIH. So those all have solicitation. Oh, and NASA. Those have all started, and some of them have actually closed. So yes, the agencies are releasing SBIRs. They're releasing those new solicitations. So keep an eye out for which agency you're interested in. If you're looking for USDA, I have not seen that come out yet, and somebody has also mentioned that EPA has not come out yet. Would the session happen to be recorded for later review? Yes, the session is recorded, and I believe that we'll get that onto a YouTube channel later. We can send that link out. On that note, would a letter of intent from a business pilot partnership help with the application? That one is a little bit trickier, just because it depends on what you're trying to do with that business partnership. So if I'm understanding right, you've got two businesses, you're writing a letter so that you work together. One of the businesses will be the awardee for SBIR, and the other business will be a subcontractor if you have two separate entities. And that subcontractor has a limited amount of work that you are allowed to send out to them. If you're looking at an SBIR, it's about 30% of that work can be subcontracted out to another entity. If you're looking at an STTR, you can subcontract more, but the person you're working with has to be a research institution, and so another for-profit business would not qualify for the STTR work. At least not the majority, which is what you would be working on an STTR for. What other questions have we got? Or let me know if you need any clarification on some of my answers there. Not seeing any. So just as a real quick recap, I think that, I've probably worked with several of the people in the chat, or I've seen you around, but I just let you know a little bit about FAST and what we have to offer. And then if you don't have any other questions, we might end early and I'll give you all your time back. But New Mexico FAST, as a federal and state technology partnership program, we are funded through the Small Business Administration. So we get federal funding to help you get federal funding. At no cost to you, right? All of our salaries and the resources are paid for by the Small Business Administration. We're here to help you get SBIR and STTR funding, which if you're here in this presentation, you probably know what that is, but that's a Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer funding opportunities. There are 11 federal agencies that participate. Those are agencies that once they get to a certain size, they have to set aside money to give to small businesses to help you with your innovation. FAST, and the program that I work for, is here to help you out. We'll coach you through the process one-on-one. We'll talk to you about which agencies are currently open. We'll help you decide which agency is a best fit for you and your technology. As you're looking through that agency's solicitation, we'll help you look at the different topics, coach you through the process. We've got writing guides, templates, checklists, all here to help you out. We have a bunch of resources for you. And we help you navigate all of the all the differences between all of those 11 agencies, right? They all participate in SBIR. 6 out of those 11 participate in STTR, and all of them act independently in the way that they fund this program. So my job is to know all those differences, and if I don't know it, I learn it, to be able to help you out and help you as you are applying. But we offer workshops. We've got topic workshops. We've had several that were pretty interesting. We had an IP workshop. We've got um, a tax workshop. Those are recorded. I believe you can find them on a YouTube channel. I think Alejandro um, knows where to find those. And so if you're interested, please reach out. We've got multi-week courses. We actually have one coming up at the end of this month, which is going to be SBIR 101. So if you're not familiar with SBIR and you're interested, that's going to be a 5-week course talking all about the differences between the different agencies. We've got a course about aerospace that's coming up. It's going to be multi-week. We've got a Department of Energy course that's coming up. That'll also be multi-week. Those are going to be very specific and very targeted toward those topics specifically. We also have commercialization workshops. Those are also multi-week. And so we've got one coming up that will help you get from phase 2 to phase 3. It'll talk about that transition and how to do it. We've also got several online resources if you're interested in doing Canvas courses on your own and learning about this information on your own time. We've got that for you as well. When we got a question in the chat, when is the deadline for the NMSBIR grant? Are you talking specifically about the matching grant that we just talked about? Just for clarification, Mike. If you're talking about the matching funds, that opportunity has not yet opened. He said that they're projecting to open that in October, and you have 4 weeks from open to close for your application. So it looks like that'll probably be the month of October will be your window to apply. But some other resources that we've got, we do have microgrants. Those could be up to $2,000. We do try to prioritize conference travel. That way you can get in front of potential clients, you can get in front of potential business partners. And then twice a year, they have SBIR specific conferences. And so we love to send people to that so that you can go and walk around table to table, talk to representatives from most of the participating agencies. Not all, but most of the agencies will send a rep. You can shake hands, talk to them, try and gauge their interest or their agency's interest in your innovation. And so we love sending people to that. We'll also help you out with service providers as well. So if you need some help either with the market aspect, if you're doing market research or customer interviews or putting together a commercialization plan, the funds can go to help fund that. I will say that the funds that we offer usually won't pay for a grant writer to write your entire application, but they will. These funds are enough for them to help out, potentially give some revisions. And if you have specific areas that you need help with, like that commercialization plan, you can get somebody to help you out with that. We've got another question. Does company need to have an SBIR to apply for the microgrant? No. So these microgrants are meant to help you have a stronger SBIR application. So we are pre-award for SBIR. That's where we step in and help you out. Yep, the microgrants are meant specifically to help you out as you are applying for an SBIR. Where do you find the info to apply for the microgrant? It's on our website. I'll go and find that real quick and put it in the chat for you. I will admit that I tend to be fairly slow looking at this. So if you send in an application, feel free to also follow up and send me an email to let me know to go look at it. I don't mean to be slow on that, but I think that I've skipped it for a day or two, and it tends to be closer to a week before I look at it again. Uh, but right there on the front of our webpage is the microgrant application. I will say to be eligible for that microgrant, you do have to be a member of New Mexico Fast. And so there's also an apply now button on this website where you can give us your information to apply to be a client for NMFast. It doesn't cost anything, just takes a little bit of time. And you also have to participate in one of our workshops or one of our events. So if you're here today and you apply to be a member or a client of FAST, then that checks both of those boxes. You also have to be a New Mexico business to qualify for those microgrants. But if you check all of those boxes, I'm happy to work with you and see if we can get a grant written for you, a microgrant that is. What other questions do we have while we're here? I'm not seeing anything in the chat and I'm not hearing anything, so I will give you all back the rest of the time that we had scheduled for this. I do appreciate you all coming and being engaged and asking questions with Mark. Thank you all again, once again, for coming, and I will see you next time. For further action items regarding the grant, do we call John or Mark? So it depends. We've talked about two grants here. If you're talking about the micro grant that New Mexico Fast offers, you'll talk to me. Um, and I can put my email in the chat here. If you're talking about the matching funds that Mark was talking about, he has links to the website for the New Mexico Economic Development Department. And so you'll go to those links and look on the website there for more information about the matching funds for SBIR. I'll hang out just a little bit longer, but again, thank you everybody for coming. And if you don't have any other questions, I will see y'all later. I'll give it about 2 more minutes. Do I have Mark's email? I can get it. There you go. I've got Mark's email in the chat now. All right, we'll wrap up for today. Once again, thank you all. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Alejandro, or if you've got questions for Mark, his email's there. Please feel free to reach out to him as well. See you all in the next one. Bye.